I want to play a question because it gets into, we can talk about it at a high level like this, but there are very just hard realities of what it looks like to do this. And so I want to play a question from somebody that sent this in. And then we're actually going to read a lot of questions we got in from social media. But here's this first one.
On October 13th, 2023, I found out that my wife of 23 years and mother of our 3 children was having an affair for over 3 months. It broke me when I found out. Since then, my emotions have been off the charts and my sexual insecurities have become out of control. She did things with him that I was denied for our entire relationship. She has told me that she wishes she had never done it because then she wouldn't know how good it could be. She has admitted to fantasizing about him while with me in the bedroom. She was literally infatuated with him and felt alive while with him. How does a man get past the feeling of not being adequate in the bedroom or get past the overwhelming pain of knowing that someone else was able to please my wife better than I can? We are very sexually active. However, no matter how good it is, I never feel it was good enough. This feeling has continued to get worse over time.
I think the men probably can address this, but I can just say after working with couples for so many years and learning a lot about men, what makes them feel masculine, what they need. And I'm certainly not a man, I ain't got it all down, but wow, that sounds so painful because that hits right at the very core of your manhood. And to know those things, once you know some of these things, you can't unknow them. And boy, my heart just really, really goes out to this guy.
Yeah, and what I would say to him, first of all, is I'm so sorry. I mean, it is a pain like no other, no question about that. And I know a lot of guys, are very visual in their thinking. So when they're playing it back, it's like they're watching a porn film, the thought of what it looked like. And they can almost hear the soundtrack going along with that. And one of the things I often tell guys in your position is like, first of all, your imagination is one of your worst enemies right now. And despite how she talks about it or how she kind of feels like she's kind of jonesing for that or whatever. I mean, one of the rules of feminine infidelity and them acting out is it's not what it looks like on the surface. This is definitely one of those cases because a lot of the euphoria a woman is experiencing in the middle of an affair is not based on the sex itself. It's based on the positive reflection of how she thinks the guy's looking at her being sexual. And that's why oftentimes women will do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And in many cases, I've worked with so many women who've had affairs who they weren't even enjoying the sex at all, but they were enjoying the guy thinking they were sexual. So they'll sometimes do things that aren't even, pleasurable to them. And in some cases, they're repulsive to them just to get the guy to look at them in a certain way. And they're so much of the euphoria is they're basking in that sense that he thinks I'm sexy. He thinks I'm exciting. He thinks I'm really valuable. So I would say in this situation and every other, we do not want to try to compete with what was going on with the affair, because not only are you competing with a fantasy, which you can't compete with, but there's nothing loving in that transaction at all. It's a biochemical state that they're kind of in. And the good news is sometimes when women get enough separation from that and they can really start ferreting out what that was and what that wasn't, their language about it changes.
I was just thinking the exact same thing. Again, I'm terribly sorry you're going through this, but please understand there's no way that what happens with you is like what happens with in an affair, because in that doing what's wrong, also doing something that's not about attachment, because right now this is not about attachment. This is about something where a bunch of factors are coming together. I remember a woman telling me once about in her affair where she had met a tall, dark stranger on a ship, and they were in this lifeboat and the lightning was going off, and, it was wild and crazy. And then she said, "That's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted my marriage." And I said, "Well, I hope you enjoyed that, because you'll never get that set of circumstances that makes that sort of experience. Again, this is just an experience. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about union." And when I talked about bad sex and good sex in the beginning, what I figured out is I never knew what union was about. And it sounds to me in this situation, your mate doesn't know what union's about. She was just, I think what John was saying, finding something that made her feel good about her. But that's not what intimacy or ultimately lovemaking is about. That was a distortion.
Perspectives will change. Your wife, and I relate to this a lot, because of her emotional attachment and feelings she had in this affair, they're definitely clouding the way she's describing even the sexual experience. And I can promise you now, almost a decade later, the rose-colored glasses are off, and really, what we felt, which maybe was just this experience of a different arousal or desire, it's far, far uglier, more awkward than, we're even able to realize later on, when we can kind of see it for what it is. And especially if you still have some feelings of, attachment to the affair partner.
I want to say something about the narrative. The narrative you tell yourself in that is that it was wonderful, because if you don't tell yourself it was amazing, like she's talking about, then the guilt and the shame associated with it.
Right. Or I'd just be crazy. And so until we can really separate all the pieces, that's exactly what we do. So, and this is never meant, it's anything other than really empathy and compassion. But I think we all can say when we've lived through it, wouldn't we say the further we get from it, we know we're healing when the comparison dies down and we can realize, right, what I did had nothing to do with my mate.
One of the things about your question shows that you know a lot of detail about your wife and what she did with her affair partner. And, when we talk about disclosure, we talk about the betrayed needs to know all that they need to know. We had some comments say, we need to know everything. And so when we talk about how much do you share or not share, we're talking about how much does the betrayed need and really want. Because once you know some of these details, you can't unknow them. And so that's kind of when we refer to disclosure being knowing the story. You've got to know it, but being careful about getting down in the weeds too much, because once you know some of those details, it can really affect you and you can't unknow them.
If you've been trying this on your own, but you feel like you're lost or you feel like you've been failing, I would just encourage you to go to our website. And if you haven't done this yet, go ahead and take our free First Steps Bootcamp. It just helps you get stable and manage expectations going into this journey, so you know what to look out for, what to expect, and even what to do when some of those things happen.